You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is an author, communications trainer, and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share with your friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, you've mentioned to me that there are 6 criteria that a potential investor looks for in an investor presentation. Tell me more about this. What are these 6 criteria?
Well, I wasn't aware of these 6 criteria before meeting my mentor here, Matteo Carenzo. So this is what he talks about in his YouTube videos. And this is his content, and he has much more amazing ideas on everything about startups. So as a side note, I would recommend if there are founders in our audience, they should check him out, and we will include the link in the show notes to his website and to the videos.
Okay.
And I really like listening to him when he talks about these 6 criteria, which is basically what investors look for when considering to invest in a startup project.
Okay.
Because new startup projects are what's the expression? Dime a dozen. So you come across them every day. You can, for example, nowadays you cannot walk around on the street or on the internet before someone tries to pitch you an idea and ask for an investment. But the reason these criteria exist is to be able to differentiate the good bunch very quickly from the rest of them, because I like how he talks about what's the scarce resource for a startup. It's money.
Yeah.
So they have the idea, they have maybe some progress in their projects, but they need the money. They need more money. They need the cash to be able to continue with the project. Well, what is the scarce resource for an investor? Is time. So in that regard, for that reason, an investor has to be able to select very quickly or eliminate very quickly when he or she is looking at a startup project and say, okay, this is worth digging deeper, or no, this is not worth spending more time in exploring it.
Let me make sure that
that's the reason behind these 6 criteria.
So let me make sure that I'm following you correctly. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm putting together a pitch deck, I'm going to go meet with a potential investor and I'm putting together a pitch deck. So these are the 6 criteria that I should probably be including in my pitch deck. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say you should probably be including that. I would say you should definitely be including them and not talk about a lot more stuff, at least in the first meeting, because it's going to be a short presentation. So I would consider that those are the 6 must-haves in the presentation and not much else. And at least in the first meetings.
So these 6 criteria. So you say that they're must-have. They're not just things that if I'm an entrepreneur, they're not just things that I should probably have in my pitch deck. They're things that I really must have in my pitch deck.
You should have.
I should definitely have those. What are those 6 things?
Well, I'm just going to count them, and then we can decide how much time it will require to go deeper on them. So the first one is the market. The second one is the value proposition that you're making with the project. The third one is timing of the project. The 5th is team. Who is running the project. The 6th one is scalability. And the 5th one is scalability, and the 6th one is exiting from the investment. Okay. So these are the criteria that I will be looking for as an investor when evaluating a startup project.
Okay. And so if we have about 7 or 8 minutes left on the podcast, so how many would you like to go into today?
Well, I could speak about them from anywhere between 30 seconds and 30 minutes or more. So let's just start with the first one and see how it goes.
Okay. And the first one, remind me, I think the first one was market, right?
Was the market, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me what typically goes, like, where should we start? What typically goes on a marketing slide?
Well, I'll tell you what typically goes currently on a marketing slide. It's not that I'm not saying that it should, but it's the case.
Okay.
What usually you see these days is 3 circles inside each other, one large circle addressing the total addressable market, and then a smaller one saying the target market, and then a smaller one saying, I don't remember the term right now, but it's something like, the idea is that the market is huge, and if we just can get like 0.005% of this market, it's going to be a massive business and we're going to make a lot of money.
Okay.
But I mean, just because you ask what typically goes, I'm giving that example. I'm not saying that that's what should go on the slide, because
okay.
I mean, everybody is claiming, every startup project claims that they are addressing a huge market, and there are millions, if not billions, of potential customers out there. But there's a huge difference between. First of all, it's a very easy research. You can just Google like the number of cell phone users in the world, and I'll tell you that our target market is 4.3 billion people or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But the problem is there's a huge difference between claiming a big market and actually participating and getting clients from that big market. So it's not only enough that you have a huge market ahead of you, that you should also be able to get customers from that market. So that has to be accessible. And this is also related to the other criteria. But what I would want to see, for example, on the slide for the market, yes, of course, it's attractive to see that you have a huge number of people who can be your potential clients. But I would also want to see how you're going to get your first clients before you get to the second one, and then the third one, and eventually, selling to 100 people, and then 1,000, and then 100,000 people, maybe.
Okay.
So rather than a top-down approach where you say, well, the total number is 4 billion and we're aiming for less than 1%. So that makes like 40,000 people. I would say, start from the first customer. Show what you're going to do to get him or her. What are the strategies you're going to put into place so that you will have your first paying customer, and then go up from there. This will give me a lot of confidence in your message and a lot of credibility to you when you show that not only you have a big market, but it's also accessible.
So this sounds like a couple slides to me. Is that so? You would need, because if you're going to describe your starting target market, what your first customer might look like, you're going, and if you're trying to do that without filling up the slide with 9 million words, you're going to need a couple slides to do that. So whereas the first slide, you basically just on the first slide, or in the old style, you basically just got 3 concentric circles, the size of the total market, and then 2 other circles. You can do that on one slide. But what you're describing here would be on multiple slides. And is that cool, or is that going to make the investor angry?
No, I think it's pretty cool. Actually, I mean, it's so common to see concentric circles, so I advise against using them. But it's important to show the size of the market eventually in the future. Okay. But maybe what's more important at the moment is walk me through the life of your first customer and how your company or project is going to interact with them. Like what expenses are you going to have to make to get your first customer? What is the cost of acquisition of the subsequent customers that you will have? And I think in the first slide, you could show some numbers about the size of the market. But again, not just some Google copy paste, like huge numbers from the internet, but a well-researched and justified numbers to show that there is a big potential ahead of you. But maybe on the second slide, show me step by step from this moment on what you're going to do. Especially with my money, since you're looking for investment, because probably you will use part of that investment to get your first customer. So show me step by step what you're going to do and what the upcoming steps are going to look like. And for that, you could definitely use, and I highly suggest you use a second slide to show that process, to show the journey of the first customer entering into your company.
Okay. And so that's the first criteria, market. And we don't have time today for all six, but let's at least do
Yes.
one other. So what's the second principle that we really need in there, that we must have in there?
Well, the second one is the value proposition, what your project is bringing onto the table as in terms of value from the eyes of the customer. And in this regard, Matthew also talks about how there is a misconception between what a value proposition is and what a competitive advantage is. Because typically you see in a pitch deck a slide about value proposition, and there are phrases like, well, we are bringing value because we have this advantage. We are the first to enter the market. Our technology is patented, or something regarding competitive advantage. But the problem here is, in the beginning, you actually don't have any competitive advantage. Even if you have a patented product, even if you are the first entrant to the market, these are not things that are going to give you sustainable advantages in the long term. The technology can be copied. There could be second, third, or fourth entrance into the market. So it's important to differentiate between what a value proposition is and what a competitive advantage is. And in this regard, I want to see the value proposition. So it may have to do with, but it should have to do with, again, the first customer that we talked about. Basically, the value proposition answers the question, why should a new customer buy your product or services compared to the other providers on the market? Why should they come to you? Product features or design or nice things nice factors about your product or service, they're most of the time not enough for other people to change their current company of a product or a service and come to you. You need to be able to provide an economic advantage, which doesn't necessarily mean that you should be cheaper. I mean, of course, it would be favorable in that regard. It's not the only criteria. But at the end of the day, I think it would be safe to say you need to be able to offer a value which is different than just saying, well, our product is better. Our product is nicer or more attractive. So you need to be able to show an economical benefit. And that's actually what I would want to see in the presentation. So an honest self-evaluation of where you're standing in terms of the competition. And by the way, it's not among these 6 criteria, but we can also talk about competition because there is, it's pretty important to show that as well, the competitive landscape. So in the presentation, at the end of the day, I would want to see, go ahead.
So I just want to interrupt and go back to marketing to market for a second, because I was thinking about what you said about market and trying to tie it back to some of the other things that we've talked about in this podcast. And one thing that struck me was that an entrepreneur who's putting together these concentric circles. One of the things that we talk about in this podcast is the importance of knowing your audience, and that your audience might not be thinking about things in the same way that you are. And it's really important to in order to have a good presentation, it's really important that you learn how your audience thinks about stuff. And if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to be with these concentric circles. I'm going to be wowed and I'm going to be starstruck by thinking, wow, this market has like 9 billion potential dollars and 60 million people or 7 billion people. And all I need is a tiny microscopic slice of that, and I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be flying around on a private airplane and all that, and eating caviar and all that stuff. And an investor doesn't care about that at all. And also, if I'm at a party and I'm talking to someone at the party, I'm standing over the punch bowl at the party and I'm talking to somebody about my startup, and I tell them about the potential market size, and the potential market size is huge. Yep. There's so much money involved and so many people. They're going to be wowed too. But the investor that I'm meeting with isn't going to be interested in that at all. The investor that I am meeting with is going to want to know, how are you going to get the first person and then the second person and the third person?
Exactly.
And if that as an entrepreneur who is wowed by these concentric circles, that doesn't impress me at all. And if I am talking to somebody over the punch bowl at a party and I tell them how I'm going to get my first customer, they're not going to be interested or impressed at all. So the things that are relevant to me are completely irrelevant to the people that I am talking to and to the people who I need to
Looks
get their
like
support.
it, yeah.
So we're about out of time for today, but I totally want to hear about, let's see. So today we kind of covered 2 of the 6, right? So we have about 4 more left. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm totally looking forward to the next couple episodes, and I want to definitely hear more about these other principles that we haven't touched on today.
Okay. Like I said, this is my interpretation of Matteo Carenzo's knowledge, and like I said, we'll include the link. So if the listeners want to go directly to the source, they are more than welcome to do that. And I also highly encourage them to follow as well, because there's an immense wealth of knowledge going on.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting Matthew myself, and it's amazing just to hear him talk. So I highly recommend that you check out these links. So It was a great pleasure, Alper, and thank you very much. I'll talk to you next week.
You too. Great talking to you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.